What's going on, everybody? It's Rodrigo with Asheville Real Estate News. Really excited to present this conversation I had with Bryce Robertson with you all today. Pretty much the topic, kind of following in theme with this month as well, is just what do we need to do, like personal responsibility and different things we can do as individuals to navigate life. And specifically, this conversation is about the economic state and how do we can be ready to transition, take advantage of opportunities, and just be ready for what's next. So we talk a little bit about everything. Not going to spoil it for you all, but take a listen. Let us know what you think. And as always, please share it with your friends or anybody else who is curious or intrigued about the state of the economy and how it's affecting real estate. Well, welcome to the show again, Bryce. It's great to have you back on, whatever third, fourth, fifth time this is. So thank you.
Thanks, mate. Great to be here.
Yeah. I know talking a little bit about what our conversation would be like today, we're probably not going to get through everything or touch on everything, but wanted to chat about like kind of the state of the economy, where things are going, and hear your perspectives on that, and also what we can do to position ourselves really well. I want to right off the bat acknowledge like the really good articles that are on Bigger Pockets, because I read them and I was like, oh, we need to just talk about this in person for a little bit, and we'll link those up. But do you mind maybe just sharing as a good starting point why you felt compelled to write them, and maybe any sticking things that stood out to you as you did the research, because there's a lot in there.
Sure. Yeah, I think the main reason that I really wanted to write these articles for Bigger Pockets is because I was talking to a lot of people out there, especially when sort of the pandemic broke out in the beginning. And a lot of real estate investors were just saying, and normal people as well, but were just saying things like, oh, we're at the top of the market, like, things are going to be good in real estate. And I was, based off all of the research that I'd done, I was just like, wow, there's like a massive gap between what's really happening behind the scenes in the economy and what people's sentiment is. And so I just felt compelled that, hey, I need to kind of like stand from the rooftops and scream out to people some information, not in a way where I'm going to vomit down their throat and say, you have to do this. I'm just saying, hey, here's some research I've done. Here's some information that I've got. Here's some links to this information. Research it yourself and let me know what you think, and make your own calculated decisions.
Yeah, I thought that was one of especially the first one, you're trying to compare this recession or possible recession with 2008 and even 1929. I was like, hey, like I'm not saying this is happening, but like nobody seems to be talking about these other facts, and we should be. Did you get good feedback on that article, or was there people like, hey, no more doom and gloom, like let's be positive, or how was what was the ripple effects of that?
I think that there was one of the most highly responded to articles on Bigger Pockets. There was like tons of feedbacks, and it was a bit of a mixture. There was like a whole crowd of people that were like, man, this is so amazing. I've been researching some of this stuff, and I knew a little bit of it. Thanks for telling me the rest. And some people like, oh, this is spot on. I've been doing my research. And then some other people like, you're crazy, man. This is all doom and gloom, and there's no way any of this is ever going to happen.
I was curious to know, at that point in March, April, kind of on the early side of the whole COVID situation, you've been on the podcast before talking about mobile home parks, also, raising money, syndication. How has like those two parts of your business been affected, or what conversations have you had there in regards to what's happening and what might happen, as this continues to play itself out?
Okay, sure. So let's talk about mobile home parks first, because that's pretty different from syndication right now. So mobile home parks, one of the reasons I got involved in the beginning is because they're recession-resistant assets. When we hit a recession and people are downgrading because they can't afford the single family, they maybe go to apartments, or the people in apartments go down to mobile homes, and there's not really anywhere else. Well, there's not really many other options for people than mobile home parks. So in the beginning, we had a little bit of hesitation on people, like, are they going to pay? Are they not going to pay? But then everybody paid on time. I'm like, wow, the stimulus package actually and unemployment insurance put people in a better position than what they would have been if they would have been working.
Right.
So they were actually more cash positive. So rents were paid on time and everything like that. And right now, and I was actually talking to you about this earlier, our mobile home parks have waiting lists. And so we've got like really, really high demand for affordable housing. It's actually, we're having a bit of a challenge trying to keep up with it and trying to bring as many homes in to fill in empty lots and make more and more homes available, because there's such high demand for affordable housing. And, mobile home parks, I just want to reiterate, I'm in the affordable housing space where lot rents are around about $300 a month. Maybe their cost of living is about $500 to $700 a month.
And that would include probably like their mortgage payment for their home if they've bought it financed.
Yep.
Right.
And even their utilities as well.
And everything, yeah. So that's definitely very low comparatively speaking.
Yeah.
And then so what about on the kind of almost the complete opposite end of that spectrum, as far as people who are looking to, invest money wisely, make calculated decisions, looking for return as far as syndication? Was there fear there, trepidation? Were people like, what's the consensus there in those conversations?
It's really, and that's a good question, and it's a bit of a mix, and it depends on what people's situation is. So the stock market crashed, a whole bunch of people cashed out, and then they needed to place their money somewhere else. So there was a bunch of people that needed to place money that were looking for deals and looking for syndications. And then there was just a whole crowd of people, and I would say this has been the majority, at least in my group, of people that are just kind of holding off. And it's like, wait up, this is not the massive opportunity just yet. We don't know. There's a lot of uncertainty. We're just going to keep our finger on the pulse and see what happens. And then there was some people that were kind of a little bit far the other way, and they're like, we've struck gold and the opportunities are here. And I'm kind of just saying, hey, we'll hold off a little bit because we're not quite there yet.
Yeah, it's one of the things we talked about in both of those articles, is that there's a lot of change, but real estate's a really slow place to see that change play itself out. What do you think? Do you think we've even felt the ripple effects of anything in real estate? And will we? Like, what is going to happen as far as that goes?
So from a global perspective, we've actually started to see a decline in real estate. But here in America, generally so far, we haven't really seen it yet.
Right.
And until we see the need for lower rents and lower, until it like becomes unreasonable for people to pay the high prices, and we find that match where sellers have to start coming down, landlords have to start coming down in rent, and until we see that price match, then we won't really see like much of a decline in house pricing or rents or anything like that to accommodate. So I don't think we're quite there yet. It could start happening before the end of the year. But most likely we're going to start seeing those effects in 2021.
Yeah, one of those things I want to kind of circle back around is you mentioned the stimulus checks and the unemployment benefits that everybody was getting, which seemed to have a good effect. But I know you also talked about quantitative easing, and we also in I think it was early June had a podcast with my first real estate coach, and he started talking about this in end of February. He's like, this is not good. Government intervention is going to create a really big ripple effect down the road. And we talked about that in depth on that podcast, but wondering what you think. Like, do you think that was a short-term fix, or is this going to just create a bigger issue for us?
I think quantitative easing is probably the biggest contributor to some of the things that we're going to see in the future. So for those who don't know about it, quantitative easing is essentially printing more money, putting more currency into the system. And the way they actually do it is digitally now, where they're literally creating currency out of thin air, and then that currency goes and gets used, and then the government essentially buys debt and buys investments, and so for each dollar that's printed, there's debt that's created for that as well. So kind of going into this, I think the US national debt was somewhere around about $4 trillion.
Yeah, I have it up here on you.
You do? And we've been printing. I mean, we're going to be print into the trillions and trillions, and it's just our national debt is going to go through the roof. And so we can't raise interest rates because if we did, that would just be like, the Japanese thing where they put the sword in themselves.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, that was what it would do to the economy. And it's not just the American economy that's going to be affected by the American dollar because there's so many other currencies that are sort of backed by it and heavily involved with the American dollar. So long term, I think short term can make it look like, hey, everything's kind of all right. But it's a false sense of things being all right. It's not sustainable. Yeah. There is going to be a much bigger crash at some point. It's inevitable. There's no way that we could hold back from that.
Yeah. So to go to the national debt. So in your article, this was March-ish, April. I forget the exact date. But it was $10 trillion for 2008 and $24 trillion and counting for 2020. And then the unemployment in 2008 was 5.8% versus 20-ish% now. Talking about the money that's been printed and put into circulation, a lot of those benefits start ending now, right? End of July. What happens next, do you think? Do you think that there's been enough time for people to have recovered, put other plans in place, or is there going to be we're going to be in a situation where it's going to force some other type of stimulus bill that gets injected to keep the ship upright?
Yeah, I think it's more the latter. I think it puts us in a position where some people would have already burnt through or nearly burnt through their reserves. Yeah. I think Americans have an average of 3 months reserves, and then they've got no money left. So the stimulus package may have helped a little bit. Unemployment insurance may have helped a little bit. You just said it. I mean, unemployment is up in the 20% and probably rising. And we might have a little bit of stimulation happening with some businesses opening back up. Yeah. But are they going to close down? Most likely. And how long they're going to be closed down for? How bad is it going to get? How long's this pandemic thing going to stay around? And what's really happening with the economy behind that? And the supply chains have massively slowed down. Yeah. Even if we picked up right now and the whole pandemic thing went away, we're still going to see some negative effects from that financially. But you add on all of the extra stuff, like all of the pandemic still being here and for God knows how long. And then in addition to that, the excessive printing of money and the excess of debt, I mean, it's not sustainable. So I think that we are going to see some kind of other government intervention. I mean, there's a lot of talk about UBI, Universal Basic Income, and some people might be interested in that, but I personally believe that gives away a lot of our freedoms. And we would sort of be giving away our freedom in exchange for, the government giving us things. People may have their own different opinions on it, but I think we're going to see a lot more government intervention. And then I also think that it'll get to a point later down the stage where they've got no more tools in the tool belt. Yeah. Because if we continue printing money and then the stimulus package and the UBI and things like that comes from the printed money, then, we'll be going to the grocery store and a jar of peanut butter is going to be worth like $30, $50, $100, $150. Right.
It's like, yes, there's going to be more money, but it's going to require 10x more money to do the exact same thing. Right? Yeah. Yeah, it feels like a little bit of a slippery slope and kind of also seems like it's really hard to know how to even get off of it or if it's possible to get off of it. Well, that's a super not rosy outlook on what might happen. But I think with everything, anytime there's a shift, right, and you talk about this, is that there's going to be a way to take advantage of a shift or respond appropriately so that the shift ends up being a positive thing. One thing I just want to read off from your article about, I thought was a really good way to put it, was what I mean by that is the opportunities that will potentially rise in 2021 are likely to trump the opportunities available in 2020. So think of 2020 as the year of preparation. It's time for us to reinforce things fundamentally so we have seriously strong foundation. And so I'd love to kind of just talk about that a little bit and how do we go from trying to keep our head above water now, so to speak, to, okay, let's think about everything that's going on below the surface so that when things start changing and the opportunities come, tenfold, that you're in a position to take advantage of them.
Yeah.
So what does that look like?
So I think the first thing is awareness, and like you said, it's not all doom and gloom. It is a bit of a negative topic to talk about, but if you're in a situation and there's people outside your house with guns, wouldn't you want to know that they're outside your house with guns? Or would you just want them to open the door and then go, oh my God, I never saw that coming?
Right.
And so that's kind of the scenario here, where I think first off, we need to be aware of what's going on. We need to be aware of quantitative easing. We need to be aware of what's really happening in the economy and not just watching what's happening on the news, because they're not telling us the full story. And then once we have that awareness, then we can make decisions. Right. And so one of the things that's obviously a wise thing to do is to have enough reserves to be able to carry ourselves through financial hardship.
Right.
And at a bare minimum, we want to have like 3 months reserves, but really we should be having like at least 6, if not a year of reserves to be able to cover all of our business expenses if we have businesses, or just our lifestyle expenses. And then there's not really a need to have more than 2 years reserves. And because at the same time, as all of this money is printing, things are going to get more and more expensive. The dollar's purchasing power goes down and down and down. So we don't want to be like loaded up on like a ton of cash right now. And I just want to make a disclosure. I'm not giving any investing advice. I can tell you what I'm doing. I'm not a financial advisor, CPA, or anything like that. But I think it's a wiser choice that once we've got our reserves taken care of, I think storing money in things outside of our bank is a smart idea right now. Silver pricing is recently starting to go through the roof and expected to go really high. Same with gold as well. And there's a lot of different areas that we can store money. Real estate right now, I don't believe we're at the area where there's an abundance of opportunities just yet. And we were just talking about that before. I think that's more going to be like maybe late this year, if not like 2021. I think 2021 and 2022 probably going to be some really good years for very heavily discounted real estate.
A question. So on the storing money, you said it's not necessary to have more than 2 years. I hear that, and I guess part of that makes sense to me. And isn't that some of that buffer time design so you can pivot, right? It's not just that you support it and you do nothing and you wait it out, right? It's like, okay, cool, things have changed, and you start positioning yourself to adapt to the changes, and that gives you the ability to focus on adapting versus just trying to survive. Is that a fair?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely, yeah. It's about like you've got 2 years to go to plan B.
Right.
Because if you have too much money stored in there, then you could be making interest on that money by having invested and time value of money.
That's what I figured. I just wanted to clarify. So getting money outside of cash, getting assets that are non-traditional, it sounds like. Real estate, we're waiting for 2021. And how do we do that then? I mean, it sounds like you either have that ability to make those changes or you need to position yourself to. So let's assume you don't have the 2 years and this kind of caught you off guard. Then what?
Perfect time to prepare.
Yeah.
Perfect time to build your A-team. Perfect time to surround yourself with the people that you need to do the volume of deals that you need to do. Get in contact with brokers, get your attorneys lined up, your CPA, whoever you need on your team.
Right.
Build that solid team, and then decide what niche you're going to focus on. Think about what's happening. There's a massive need for affordable housing. I'm screaming from the rooftops on this one, and mobile home parks can fill a little bit of that void. But there's a 1% decline in mobile home park inventory each year because there's more being closed than there are being built. So mobile home parks can't solve the problem by themselves. Mobile home parks are a great niche to be in. But I'd be thinking outside the box of things like how can I, in my market or whatever market I want to focus on in America, provide affordable housing, and I'm talking like their living expense, their housing expense is $700 a month or less, or maybe you could probably go up to like $1,000, but there's a massive need for people to have that type of housing. So I think there's a massive problem to solve there. Unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to need that housing that won't have it. And there's an opportunity for people like us to step in there and solve that problem and to help our community and to help other people. And at the same time, that's also going to be very advantageous because the supply and demand there is going to be huge. So I think we need to find what niche we're going to specialize in. Think about what's happening, what is the landscape going to look like in the next 12 months, in the next 2 years. Oh, people are going to be in a hard financial situation. Yeah, we need to fill that void. So, I mean, I'd even be thinking out of the box. There's a lot of retail stores that have closed down. There's a lot of strip malls that are going to close down, probably not going to open back up.
Right, yeah.
And there's some zoning in some of these buildings where you may be able to talk to the planning department in the city and be able to create some kind of affordable housing setup there. It may be new and creative. There's also like tiny homes, but that's not going to take care of everybody. That's a small little niche. I'd just be thinking outside of the box on how can we solve the affordable housing problem in America, because that, in my opinion, that's the biggest problem in real estate to be solved.
Yeah, I agree, and I think as anybody who lives or works in Asheville, that's even more apparent than maybe in other places. It's talked about ad nauseum here. It's on the tip of every conversation when you talk about real estate. It's like, well, how do we work around this? I wanted to focus a little bit in your article of like preparation. You talk about making sure that you're mentally and physically prepared for the changes too. And I thought that was, I mean, obviously it's important, but why did you feel like it was something you wanted to highlight in an article about real estate and about laying a foundation? What about it was like, this has to be included?
That's a great question. And the interesting thing about that is when people want to learn how to become financially free, or they want to learn how to create the lifestyle that they want, there's a massive automatic focus on money. How do we do, like how to do it? How do you find a mobile home park? How do you find a single family residence? Who do you need to be, like, that's all the how-tos. That information is everywhere, and that information is important, but it's only 20% of what we need to know, okay? So the other 80% is the mental side of things. Right. If we can know, how many of us have done a course or read a book and then not applied any of the stuff in the book?
Everybody, right?
Everybody, yeah. And that's where the 80% of mental attitude kicks in. So one, we need to be mentally prepared for, okay, this is going to be a bit uncomfortable. Let's prep ourselves for that mentally so that we're not freaking out when it happens. Yeah. And then two, who do I need to be and what do I need to do to have strength to do all the things, to execute the things that I want to do? And so we really need to take care of ourselves mentally, for sure.
And then why physically?
Well, if you want to go out there and do a bunch of deals and provide a bunch of value, and like when the opportunities become abundant, I mean, we're going to be working around the clock. It's going to be off the hook. We need to have the physical stability to get through that, the physical foundation, and think about all of the stuff that's going on right now with the pandemic. Those who have a good immune system and who have been taking care of themselves physically and with their health, they're not really concerned. Those who haven't are a little bit concerned. So we just need to take care of our health, because the better our health, the better our relationships, the better that we can go out there and make money, the better everything else is. Yeah,
it's kind of the base. Talking about foundations, that is it, right?
Yeah.
I've been listening to your podcast, Freedom Hack Radio, and curious to know, I think it's a really good place to get a lot of this information that you're talking about, just all well-rounded. Here we pretty much just talk about real estate and pretty focused to Western North Carolina. Can you just share a little bit about your podcast or a lot of bit about, what prompted you to decide to do it, and then talk about maybe what your favorite interview's been so far and why, and just talk about, what you've been learning through that process.
Sure. Yeah, so, I created financial freedom through real estate, and in the beginning when I did that, I was on a path of making money, and it was all about making money. All my goals were money. And through the process of becoming financially free, I realized, health's pretty important. Relationships are pretty important. There's a lot of challenges, and when the challenges come, if I'm not grounded spiritually, then it doesn't go as well. And I've got to have some fun along the way as well.
Yeah.
So I realized as I'm going on my path to financial freedom, by the time I achieved it, I'm like, yeah, money's important, totally is. But also important is our health, which is mental, physical, and dietary. Our relationships, not just with our spouse and our kids and our mom and dad, but business relationships and relationships with people in our community. Everything's relationships. Think about a real estate deal. How many people do you have involved in that? It's all relationships. And then spirituality from the standpoint of we need to be the calm eye of the storm, and we need to be spiritually grounded so that we're not lost and chaotic through chaos, that we're actually grounded, and then having fun. And those things are important. And if we improve our finances, then we can afford to spend more money on gym equipment or a personal trainer, or maybe we can take people to a better dinner or go out and enhance our relationships. And if we have better health, then we've got more stamina, and they kind of all feed off each other. So the more that you focus on one of these areas, the more they feed on each other. So really the podcast is all about growing and maintaining balance in all of these 5 areas, with the ultimate goal of what I call the freedom trinity, which is financial freedom, time freedom, and location freedom. And when you have all of those 3, then you literally can do what you want, when you want, with who you want, because you want, anywhere you want, at any time. And that to me is true freedom. And so the reason I created the podcast is because this is what I've created in my life. And I used to live, before all of this, I was a little bit dissatisfied. You know, I knew I wasn't living to my potential. I knew I wasn't living my ideal life. Now I've created it. It is so freaking amazing. I love my life so much. It is awesome. And I really want to share that with other people and help them live a freedom lifestyle as well.
Yeah, it's... I mean, it really comes through how appreciative and excited you are about kind of your learning process when you're on the podcast and asking questions and interacting with your guests. This was a new venture for you, right?
Yes.
And doing something new, is there a big takeaway that, as far as that, something that you learned that you were, or a challenge you were not expecting to have to work through?
So I started it off, and I'm just like, I just knew instinctively it was something I had to do. And the intention is like, I've got something to share with people. If I can wake up some people and help them live a freedom lifestyle, then deal done. And that's the core intention for the podcast. But as I'm going through it, I'm realizing, like, because so the first 6 episodes was me setting the foundation of how to live a freedom lifestyle. And then after that, it's interviews with other people. As I'm going through these interviews, and these interviews are people at the top of the top of each of these niches that I spoke about, it's like I've got my own consultations and my own self-development platform that, as we're providing value to listeners, I'm also like learning a ton as well, and I'm getting to grow, and I'm getting to deepen my spirituality, and I'm getting to deepen my financial awareness and enhanced health. And I've got all these specialists coming on, it's giving priceless information. And so I find myself, after each episode, I run out to like my wife and I'm like, oh, that was such a cool conversation. I learned this, and this. And I want to make it a point that I'm not just like talking about it, that I'm actually starting to implement some of these things into our life. So it's been a really awesome growth curve for me as well.
No, thank you for starting. I've definitely enjoyed listening. So, well, as we're wrapping up here, I know we had you on to talk about the book, but obviously, if you haven't read it, I encourage people to do so. Anything you want to say about the book that we might not have covered in the first episode, because it's been out now, what, 7 months?
Well, it came out on the 4th of July last year.
Oh,
so
wow.
we're about a year
already?
Yeah, it's been a year, right?
Wow.
It has flown. And you know, we just a couple of weeks ago we received #1 international bestseller title for the book, so really stoked on that.
Yeah.
But even more exciting, I think, is some of the results that we've had, some of the feedback we've had for people. Because this book is about, there's 8 of us, we're Australians, we came from Australia over to America, we created financial freedom through our own niches in real estate. We share our story and we share how we kind of did it and what niches we did it. And we've got feedback from people like there's an attorney in California who really ultra successful business. She got our book, and before she got our book, her next step financially was to upgrade in lifestyle, get the dream house, all that kind of stuff, all the bells and whistles. She read the book. She's like, whoa, I was totally on the wrong path. And then I think it was in 6 months, she ended up getting like 4 investment properties, started creating cash flow. And now she's like reducing business expenses and she's creating cash flow. And her new goal is to replace her business
Active
over
income,
here with passive income. Then she has freedom. And so
awesome.
And we've had plenty of stories like that where people have it basically changed their trajectory into taking care of their freedom financially.
Yeah, can't ask for anything more.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Bryce, thanks again so much for coming on the show. Again, we're going to link up the articles on Bigger Pockets or from Bigger Pockets as part of the show notes and everything. Same thing with the book. Where else can people find you, connect with you? Any parting words?
Yeah, I mean, you can check me out at freedomhackradio.com. You can check out the YouTube station, Freedom Hack Radio. You can go to propertyworksusa.com. Propertyworks ends with a Z. You can find me in all those ways. I would just say final words to people is just make sure you've got your finger on the pulse of what's going on here. Don't go all in too early. Kind of wait and see what's happening here, but get everything set up. We're about to see some like pretty crazy times here, I believe. And so, we're not quite through it yet. It may be a little bit dark for a while, but there's going to be abundance of opportunities in there. And on the flip side of it, I believe that in 2023 and onwards, it's going to be very, very prosperous and amazing. It's just kind of look at it like we're basically detoxing right now because the economy's been doing some stuff where, the economy's been doing some naughty stuff to the economy, and we just need to detox some of those things out of there and have a bit of a change. So stick in there, be smart, and keep your finger on the pulse.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Bryce. Thanks, everybody. See you guys on the next one. Take care.